Hello and welcome to North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me today, I have a Jer.
Hello.
A Wheeler.
Hello.
And unfortunately, Alex is absent. So you see what happened is he got so mad in a Twitter argument that he actually got his Planeswalker spark, and now apparently he's in Ravnica fighting Bolas?
Seems legit.
Or he's in Boston at PAX. I'm not sure which. Go with whichever one makes the most sense to you. Reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. All right, let's start off with the best card that you're not playing. Jer, you're up today. Tell me your secrets.
All right, so this won't be a huge surprise to those of you that watched the last Friday night paper fight, Highlander League Episode 2, Electric, everyone lost to Lou. No more I guess that's spoilers. I won't spoil too much.
Yeah, watch it. Watch it. It's very exciting.
Yeah, but a slight spoiler from that, and for those who watch my stream, Wilderness Reclamation is the best card you're not playing. The Scourge of Standard.
The Scourge of Surge.
Probably better than you expected in Highlander.
So, yeah, I mean, this is a 4-mana do-nothing enchantment.
All right, well, the problem with most do-nothing cards is that you play them, and then you're like, oh, I really got to untap with this. Like, I hope I don't die on my next turn. But that fixes that weakness, because you get to untap immediately on your turn. If they have a problem like a Planeswalker and you have a Planeswalker removal spell, you can play this and kill their Planeswalker. Before they get to activate it, you can play this and untap with counter magic.
Sorry, that really cracks me up, the idea of I need to untap with this. You're like, haha!
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the things I looked at is like, sure, it's do nothing, it's kind of gimmicky, but it does solve some of the downsides of some of those issues. And it also leads to some interesting deck building, because it leads you to want to put in more instant speed things. It leads you to want to put in more card draw. It leads you to want to put in more mana sinks. And you get to play some really interesting cards that you may not play otherwise.
What deck is this going into?
So I played it in a control deck, a bug control deck. I also think that a Bant shell or a 4-color or even 5-color shell are totally reasonable to slot this card in. The mana requirement in terms of colored mana is as low as it gets, super easy to cast. You're likely going to want to pair it with blue as your base color. You want to draw cards with this.
I mean, the downside, it does push you into green in control.
I don't think that's a downside. Green has a lot of good control cards. Like Sultai Charm was an all-star for me. And you also get to play a lot of versatile answers like Maelstrom Pulse, Assassin's Trophy, Abrupt Decay. So I don't necessarily think being in green and control is that big of a downside. And the more colors you go into, the
more
lighter
answers you get.
The lighter the green splash can be.
Yeah.
So,
Combo Degenerate Wheeler, question for you.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this in combo? Any way you could break it wide open, or do you think it's just kind of the value control that we have proposed by Jer here?
I think it's probably just best in that kind of control shell. Like, my first thought when I'm looking at this is, oh, this card would be great with Time Walks. But you know what's also great with Time Walks? Just nothing itself, just Time Walks. Playing Magic the Gathering. But it just feels like putting this in combo is not where you want to be.
Sure.
Highlander is not, like, in Standard, the Nexus decks, they blur that line of combo and then kill you with this control finish.
Sure,
like
yeah.
Niv or Nimbus at Perrin or Teferi. But for us, in our format, you don't have to do that. You can just kill them with Black Lotus. So you don't need to go to this.
That extra investment. All right. Well, if you want to see Wilderness Reclamation in action by Jer, as hinted before, the episode 2. Let's go with part 2 of the Spring League is live on the Loading Ready Live YouTube channel, so check that out. And little sneak peek, the episode 3, part 3, will be airing on twitch.tv/LoadingReadyRun April 26th, so check this out. So let's introduce today's theme. Speaking of War of the Spark, speaking of everybody getting super hype on Planeswalkers on Twitter, and the latest releases have gone out, and we're starting to see a lot of what's out there, we have prepared an episode all about Planeswalkers. So here's how it's going to go. We are all going to talk about Planeswalkers in this format, how we evaluate Planeswalkers. Ben is making some faces over here because very powerful cards. How do they line up in Highlander, where we have access to the most powerful cards throughout the history of Magic? Wheeler's, you can't. I don't know if the mic is picking it up. You can hear his teeth grinding.
I sure love Planeswalkers.
Yeah. Then what we're going to talk about is our personal top 5 Planeswalkers. Not necessarily the ones that we think are best, but the ones that we play the most. Or basically, we had to narrow down to 5 that we want to talk about. So we're going to talk about that. Then begins the rumbling. We're going to talk about collectively, the top 5 we think for the format and see how that goes. Well, let's open it up really quickly. How do you feel Planeswalkers are positioned in Highlander right now? Let's go with Wheeler. You look like you have something to say.
Hi, my name's Wheeler, and I have something to say.
Yeah?
I wouldn't play a Planeswalker on any given day. No, I'm either... You need to have, 40 Planeswalkers in your deck. I mean, Don't get that carried away. Like the Super Friends archetypes. I'm a big fan of that when it's this own celestial being of you have so many Planeswalkers and you're just going walker after walker after walker, or you just play one. And I think a lot of people tend to kind of get in the middle. The first inclination is to slam a bunch of Planeswalkers as their top end curve for their mid-range decks, for their aggro decks, or they rely too heavily on them for control shells. And I mean, personally, there's not a lot of Planeswalkers that work well in combo decks.
Sure.
There's
we're getting the no nod from Jer over here. All right.
No, I was
No,
agreeing.
he's agreeing.
I'm agreeing.
Oh, all right.
I think the walkers that we all believe would be fine in combo shells are very evident that they belong in those shells.
Yeah, I was shaking my head because I was thinking about all the Planeswalkers I see people playing in combo.
Yeah, that's kind of heinous.
It's not
Interesting. Jer, how do you feel?
I'm a little more medium on them than Ben. I like winning a game with a Teferi or a Jace the Mind Sculptor as much as the next person. I'm likely to include instead of Ben's 1, I'm on the 2 or 3, but I'm well away from the 6. I'd err closer to 1 than 6.
Interesting.
I'd say.
Apparently, I'm old school for the format here. I'm not bleeding edge.
You love your Planeswalkers.
I don't know about I love my Planeswalker, but I do feel they have a place in the format. I feel like the exact cases you're giving there in your mid-range decks. You're just if you land a Planeswalker against control, it lives through their wrath. It can be a win con and a finisher that dodges a lot of removal that some of the other decks, Flame Slash doesn't kill my Garruk.
Right. I mean, there's, for mid-range specifically, the one Planeswalker is that's me just being me.
Yeah.
But realistically, having 1 to 3 in the mid-range decks, the control decks, I'm not going to say no to Teferi or Jace in control. I'm not going to say no to doubling up on a Garruk, Gideon, Nissa kind of trio for a mid-range deck. But when people start getting up to 7 Planeswalkers in their Abzan mid-range decks, and just reaching for really weird kind of niche inclusions that don't synergize very well, that's when you're losing out on a lot of utility.
Yeah, I also think people don't. They put Planeswalkers in their all right, this is going to win me the game slot, but they don't actually think about how the games go that often. Most Planeswalkers don't actually end games very quickly, and they're printing more and more answers to them. In the past 2 sets, there's Assassin's Trophy and Bedevil, just as a
just one for
instance,
with it, yeah.
And so they're also getting less reliable as win conditions, and as opposed to something like your classic Siege Rhinos, Thundermaw, Hellkites, even something
pushing back
old school Batterskull,
the old classic creatures there.
Yeah, or
Wait,
your
fair
more
magic,
or your more proactive or value oriented threats. I've been a huge fan of Thrun recently. I think people are sleeping on the troll again, and I think it's very well positioned in our meta currently, as well as just some more value oriented threats like Ben mentioned earlier, Niv Mizzet per run in a standard context, but I'd include it over a Planeswalker in any deck that could cast it nowadays.
just thinking where Planeswalkers have no place in combo. Hoof. I mean, I'd see Hoof as a hybrid combo deck, and it gets so much value out of its Planeswalkers.
It's a hybrid combo deck, but the Planeswalkers don't really contribute that much to the combo.
It's
gameplay.
the hybrid part of Hoof is also a very much just a ramp deck, right? You're looking to hit key mana points on key turns, following a very kind of strict curve, and a lot of the Planeswalkers that you're including for that curve also happen to be like you can drop them on turn 3 or turn 2 and they get you to 6 the following turn, or they also act as like a through the breach effect in some cases.
Sure.
And ramp decks I think get a pass for Planeswalkers because ramp decks will play cards like Soul Ring and Mana Crypt, or just like talismans, kind of in the Super Friends, the same line as Super Friends, where like, yeah, if you poop this out on turn 2, great. And if you follow it up with another one on turn 3, double great.
Just trying to see where we go here, because we've shifted our position to Planeswalkers have no room in the format.
I don't think either of us were trying to say that.
Okay, perfect.
They certainly have a place in the format, but I think both Ben and I are less high on them than other people, and in general think they're maybe a little overrated as a card type in general. That's a sweeping generalization. As always, take it as gospel at your peril.
Okay, so we've gotten sort of a baseline as to our feelings and how they go there. How do you evaluate Planeswalkers? What do you think makes a good Planeswalker versus a bad Planeswalker? Because this will help inform how we sculpt our top 5. So let's start with Jer.
Well, first I think you have to look and see if it has an immediate home. I think that's something a lot of people don't do. They look at a Planeswalker in a vacuum. Like, I think a lot of people were looking at the new 4-mana Vraska Golgari Queen, I think is her name. And they were like, oh, she's great. Like, she's going to be the Nuts and Aristocrats, or like even just in a rock shell, like, she's great. Like, her abilities are good. She starts with a lot of loyalty, but she just doesn't do anything that a deck really wants to do. Like, in Aristocrats, you really want your sack outlets to be repeatable and 0 mana. In the rock, you really don't want to be sacrificing your permanents as early as turn 3 or 4. And drawing cards isn't like, sure, late game you'll sack a land to draw a card and gain a life. And you also don't want your removal to be constricted. You want it to be as ubiquitous as possible.
Sure. So the CMC 3 or less is...
Yeah, just looking if it has a home is...
Can you really quickly just go through Vraska and all of her abilities?
Yeah, sure. So she's 2 black-green for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. So that's what I mean by she comes in with a lot of loyalty. She comes in with loyalty equal to her CMC, which is a plus generally. She has a +2, which is another big deal. You may sacrifice another permanent. If you do, you gain 1 life and draw a card. -3, destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. And her ultimate, -9, you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So she has like a pretty
powerful kit.
And a pretty cookie cutter kit as well. Like, the +1 gains you some incremental value. The -3 is some removal / protection of some sort, and the ultimate wins you the game. But the reason I don't think she really has a home is her... You really want to look at the first 2 abilities and the uptick in particular. And I just don't think the uptick has that ability, like a deck that wants that ability. So the first thing I'm looking at when I evaluate a Planeswalker is the ability that I'm going to be using the most often, which is either the uptick or a 0 if the Planeswalker has one, is like, how much does the deck I want to put this in want that ability?
All right. How do you evaluate Planeswalkers?
So,
if there's anything different from what Jer said.
I want to touch, and this comes into my own evaluation as well, is that, for starters, card evaluation is very difficult, just as a whole.
Definitely.
And Planeswalkers are probably the most difficult to evaluate card type in the game. It's still very... I mean, it seems weird to say it's fresh because they've been around for like 12 years now. But it's still very fresh. It's still very new. And when you look at a Planeswalker, they all do things that look good. Like, it's easy to justify that a Planeswalker is strong. Because if you play, like if you're testing one out, like Vraska, and you play her and you think, okay, I'm going to use her to sack lands and gain life and to kill things. And
Sounds good.
when you play her, what does she do? Well, she sacks lands to gain life, draw you cards, and she can occasionally kill things. So you're like, oh, this is great. This card did what I had set myself up for it to do, which is why I think people include so many of these, of Planeswalkers. That's not really how I approach cards like this. If I'm including a Planeswalker, I want the absolute bottom of the card to still just be fine, to still give me an opportunity to either change the tide of a game, if possible, at least cement a board state if this card's going to die immediately. So cards like Dak Faden or Gideon Ally of Zendikar, stuff like that. Very kind of like, not to spoil your future lists.
Yeah, so I didn't ask Jared, like, give me an example of a good one, because that was going to give it away. But okay.
Let's go with Dak Faden.
Sure.
Because, so Dak Faden
Greatest thief in the multiverse.
Greatest thief in the multiverse. He's 1 blue and a red for 3 starting loyalty. First uptick +1. Target player draws 2 cards and then discards 2 cards. -2, gain control of target artifact. -6, you get an emblem that says whenever a creature, possibly permanent or is it non-land or just permanent?
Permanent.
Oh, there you go. Whenever you cast a spell that targets 1 or more permanents, gain control of those permanents.
Now, Dak sees play in Vintage.
Yes.
That is where he sees the most play.
But I mean, there's a lot of artifacts running around.
Yeah.
You're drawing extra cards here. So if I look at Dak and I say, okay, a 3 mana investment, if I uptick and then Dak immediately dies, what am I getting? Well, I'm paying 3 mana to draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, and gaining 4 life or blocking 4 damage somewhere. Which
costing them a turn or a spell or something.
They can eat up a combat step. It can eat up mana investments on their turn to try and kill Dak.
Ah, yes, the old Planeswalker fog.
There are situations where like this is all this card's going to be doing, and that's fine as the absolute worst for me playing it using its +1 and then it dying. If you look at the absolute worst for its -2 is you play Dak, you pay 3 mana, you take one of their things, and then you eat up damage. And whatever you take could be like, I don't know, think of cheap artifacts in the format.
Yeah.
They're all pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? You grab a Moxen, so you ramp yourself, you grab...
Or potentially deprive them of a color. Yeah.
You're not only ramping yourself, you're taking away one of their mana sources. Or I guess it's pretty bad if you play it and take something that's like symmetrical, like a Winter Orb or whatever. But
you're probably not down ticking on.
No, you're probably not doing that.
No.
So, like looking at a card like that, and if I'm like comfortable with the +1 and it dying, and I'm comfortable with the -2 and it dying, I'm probably going to play this card.
And I think that's an important thing is that Ben's looking at the average case, whereas if we go back to Vraska for a second and look at the floor on Vraska, is if they have a board of things that aren't CMC 3 or less, so her down tick isn't usable, you're on 4 lands, or you're at a position where you don't want to sack a land, you +2 her, get no value, and then she probably eats a combat step or part of a combat step, which is, in my opinion, isn't good enough because you're not getting any value. You're just using her as an overpriced fog, basically, or partial fog. So I agree with Ben there.
Any last thoughts or comments on Planeswalker as a whole before we start talking about our top favorites, lists, or anything like that? I mean, we've talked about how we evaluate them. Go ahead.
Don't leave this episode thinking that you can't test out these Planeswalkers, or that, oh, my mid-range deck has 5 Planeswalkers, now North 100 will hate me. It's just like, no, this is us the very general view on the format and our opinions for deck inclusions, and like, try out Planeswalkers. Because given your metagame, given your personal deck construction, your curve, adding more walkers can be a good thing. And sometimes you also need to take a step back and say, you know what? I'm going to leave Vraska on the table at home and sleeve up a Marin.
Thrun.
Or a Thrun. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, then let's talk about our top 5. Let's go with Jer. Jer, slow roll it too. And then when we talk about the first 5, your top 5, pardon me, talk about where you include it and why you include it.
Sure. All right, so I'll go 5 to 1.
Yep.
And these are just my personal favorites.
Yeah, these are what we play, not necessarily what we think is best for the format.
These aren't even the ones I play the most. Just the ones I like the most.
All right.
And I do play them.
Yeah.
So my first one is Vraska Relic Seeker.
So 5th place.
Yeah. The 5th on my list.
6 mana.
I play this card definitely the most in the format.
Jeremy loves this card
Yeah,
so much.
I sat across this on a tournament recently. It didn't go well.
So I don't tend to like 6-drops in mid-range decks or even control decks that much. I think her best home is if you're playing ramp spells, so either like bug ramp or a rock style deck.
Can you go through all the abilities too?
Right.
Pardon me.
So she's 6 mana, 4 black-green, comes with 6 loyalty, +2, make a 2/2 black pirate creature token with Menace.
Yep.
-3, destroy target artifact, creature, or enchantment, and you get a colorless treasure token that is a lotus petal, so you can sack it for 1 mana of any color. And then -10, target player's life total becomes 1. So same cookie cutter, Planeswalker style, +2, get some value / protection, -3, removal, -10, I'll win the game. The reason I like her so much is because I think, like, relative to other Planeswalkers, she's, like, her removal is more ubiquitous than most Planeswalker removal. You get the utility of being able to blow up artifacts or enchantments.
Why do you also get a treasure token?
Pirate matey.
The creatures she makes have a relevant combat ability that also synergize with her ultimate, and she gets to ultimate the 3rd turn after she comes down, which is very fast. She ends the game very, very quickly. If you're playing a mid-range or control deck and just 1-for-1ing and then are able to slam Vraska on a relatively unopposed board, I think you're leagues ahead of your opponent in terms of likely to win percentage.
She has what I'd like to coin as a primeval Titan clock, where you slam her, does an immediate thing that scares people. Mm-hmm. If you untap, you do one more thing where it's like, oh god, I'm really dead now, and then the next turn, surprise, you're actually just dead.
Yeah. And I think people are scared off by the mana cost.
Yep.
But I think she is just a great Planeswalker and does everything you want out of a 6 mana card. My number 4 slot is a card that's almost certainly worse, but I enjoy more. Narset Transcendent. She's 2 white-blue, comes in at 6 loyalty, has a +1. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a non-creature, non-land card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. -2, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell from your hand this turn, it gains Rebound. And -9, you get an emblem with your opponents can't cast non-creature spells. So this is a little less of a cookie cutter slot. She has no way to protect herself apart from the fact that she's a 4-mana Planeswalker that comes in with 6 loyalty, which is mostly enough protection because you're really only playing her in a control deck because that's the only way to utilize the +1. You want to be a deck with very few creatures. I most often play her in Oath of Druids shells, so I haven't played her in a while because Oath of Druids isn't a very good deck. But I love this card. You can do a lot of really wacky things. The -2 is very abusable in taking turns decks. The +1 is great. Just like being able to draw a card most of the time. You can abuse it with like deck manipulation, which you're likely to have a lot of in a deck that is able to play this. So number 4, Narset Transcendent, one of the more underrepresented Planeswalkers in the format.
This list is catching me completely off guard.
Number 3, Venser the Sojourner. For those of you who have seen one of the previous Bant Friday Night Paper Fight Canlander events,
I need to go.
You'll have seen a deck I played with this in it, or in my or on my stream again. I play Bant Blink with this card.
So what are all the abilities
quite a bit.
here?
So this one's 3 white blue, for a Planeswalker comes in with 3 loyalty, so pretty low for a 5-mana Planeswalker. But it has a +2, exile target permanent you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. So that ability is really interesting because if somebody, for instance, Dax one of your Moxes, you can plus on the Mox even though they control it because you own it and then you get it back. The most underrated Planeswalker ability in Magic is -1 creatures are unblockable this turn. The amount of times you just play this card, they have a counter spell, they don't counter it, then you -1 and they die is astronomically high.
Huh. Like Venser, that doesn't do anything, and you're like...
Yeah, they're like, oh, that just blinks things? Sure, resolves. You're like, -1. They're like, what does that do again? Oh, no. And then -8 is you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, exile target permanent. So,
seems decent.
Ultimate, you win the game. -1, you win the game a lot of the time. +2, get value. My number 2 on the list is Tamiyo the Moon Sage. A relic of yesteryear again. So she's 3 blue, comes in with 4 loyalty. I thought it might have been 3. +1, tap target permanent. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So you freeze a permanent, which is relevant. It's really backbreaking when you cast this ahead of schedule and your opponent doesn't have creatures in play, and then you're just stone raining their best land for the rest of the game. And notably, it taps it, unlike a Johnny Vengeance ability, so
which is
you always just get their best land.
Johnny Vengeance.
Space of Johnny.
-2, draw a card for each tapped creature target player controls. I've activated this ability maybe 3 times lifetime, but when you do, you're often drawing a lot of cards or you're about to die the next turn, so it's either very good or, a Hail Mary opportunity. And then -8 is one of the coolest ultimates. You get an emblem with, you have no maximum hand size, and whenever a card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you may return it to your hand. I've won a lot of games with this ultimate, a bunch of them in Standard, several in Highlander, but
recall you?
You're basically never losing after you ultimate this. And my number 1 favorite Planeswalker is actually Tamiyo Field Researcher.
Oh.
And I think this is up there for most underrated Planeswalkers. I don't see her played very often, but I think she's absolutely amazing at pulling you ahead in the mid game, as well as being a reasonable card when you're behind, and good at winning you the game. So she's 1 plus Bant, which is green, white, blue. Comes in with 4 loyalty again. So 4 loyalty for a 4-mana Planeswalker, pretty good rate. +1, choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, you draw a card. So notably, you don't have to choose your own creatures. So if you think they're going to be attacking Tamiyo or you, and it doesn't say combat damage to a player, it just says combat damage. It's got the GT phrase in there.
Yeah.
So you have a pretty high chance of drawing 2 cards.
The big brain of targeting your opponent's creatures with that.
Yeah, and you can sometimes sketch them into not pressuring your Planeswalker that's going to
you're like, go ahead and attack me. I'll draw. And they're like, whoa.
And then -2, tap up to 2 non-land permanents. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. So you can freeze artifacts, which can be good in certain matchups, and you can also freeze creatures for a whole 2 turn cycles. Like if you freeze 2 of your opponent's creatures on your turn, you then get to attack. They don't untap, you get to attack past those creatures again. And she can just -2 2 turns in a row with her loyalty, which I've done a lot to win games. So if you're in a racing situation, she's absolutely amazing. And then -7, the ultimate is draw 3 cards. You get an emblem with, you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. Once again, likely wins you the game, but you're almost never activating that.
I feel like I've never read that -7 before. That seems
It's one of the less relevant ultimates, I actually think. You're likely playing this in a creature deck because both of her first 2 abilities want you to be a pretty board-centric
Where are you playing
deck.
Tamiyo? Yeah, I mean, so when we're looking at the previous cards, so Narset, Venser, Sojourner, and Tamiyo, the shells are somewhat more straightforward. I've never been able to find a home for Tamiyo.
This one?
Yeah.
I think she's amazing in Bant Blade. She's great in Bant Midrange. I've played her in 5-color Zoo. I think you just want to be a reasonably proactive deck that can look to always have 2 creatures in play. Like if everything's going according to plan, and the ability for the -2 to win you the game.
The weird part about this card is this seems like another one of the Planeswalkers that you don't want to ramp out early. And that's why it seems kind of tough, because, you know...
I think she's great if you ramp her out early.
I mean, if you go Mana Dork into Bant 3-drop, pick whichever one you want. They're all pretty good into this. That's pretty scary. And that's not exactly an unreasonable request for that kind of deck.
No, uptick, draw 2. If they have a creature in play, they're likely not going to block. So you force through damage if you target your 3-drop and their potential blocker. Like, and then if they attack, and it's for the whole...
You target your attacker and their blocker.
And it's for the whole turn cycle. So if they then attack Tamiyo, you still get to draw.
Card is really messed up with Brimaz. You just like Vigilance Cat and their thing and smash, and because Vigilance, if they attack into the Brimaz, then you get to draw so many cards.
Why didn't anybody ever tell me how that card worked?
It's also messed up with Edric.
I got an extra copy if you're interested.
I think I have a copy too. I think I opened it in like a pre-release, and I was like, oh, yawn. Tamiyo, the too many manas and too many words.
What?
No, she's one too few manas and exactly the right number of words. Yeah, and her ability stacks with Edric, so if you really want to dumpster your opponent in cards, if that's the game you want to play.
So April 26th for the next league, huh?
Serge is like, yep, Tamiyo.
Interesting.
T-A-M.
Yeah, Edric. What else we talk about there? Brimaz? Okay,
Yeah.
Brimaz. All right, I got 3 out of 97. Let's go. Caracas. So, wow. Gonna be honest, Jer, your list surprised me. Your list really surprised me.
Yeah, and I'd like to note again, those are not the Planeswalkers I think are the best positioned or the most powerful in the format. Those are just my faves.
Interesting. How many do you think your list of 5 and my list of 5 have in common?
0.
You'd be correct.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'll go next here. All right, so Jer and I play very different decks. And the way that I went through this was, what is the Planeswalkers that I played the most? And keep it in mind, the archetypes that I play are Prison, Enchantress, Pox, occasionally white-green mid-range, and artifacty things. It's a weird wheelhouse.
Murderer's Row.
Yeah, like it's a very weird wheelhouse of archetypes that I play in. So let's go with my 5th place. And my 5th place...
Thalia in the streets, Moat in the sheets.
Wait a minute.
Wait. Carry on.
So in 5th place, I originally had Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, and I'll talk about Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. So 4 mana Planeswalker, 2 a blue and a black, gets you a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. +1, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal an artifact card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. -1, target artifact becomes a 5/5 forever, like in Soul Artifact. And -4, and this is an ability that Wheeler killed me with a lot. Target player loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is twice the number of artifacts you control. So I was like, oh yeah, that's a shoo-in for place number 5. And then we started talking about a Johnny Vengeant, and I was like, nah. But no, I'll keep Tezzeret up there. So in 5th place, Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas. You could see this in old school like rock decks. And old Academy decks is sort of a value card. It's seen a lot less play in that now.
You mean
I don't
Rock
know if
decks, right?
Rock is
No,
Rock
sorry. Mana Rock, not the Rock. Mana Rock
I
decks.
splash for Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas.
Like I think Sensei's Divining Top and Staff of Nin.
Go get him, Golgari Signet.
Yeah, Academy decks maybe 5 or 6 years ago were probably all playing this card, because this was before it went as combo heavy with Paradox Academy and the stuff it's sort of seeing now. And the Academy decks are like, I can produce a lot of mana, now what?
Yeah, the classic conundrum was whether you splashed for Tezzeret and Baleful Strix or just Tezzeret.
Yeah.
Orthopter Foundry.
Yeah. And it was interesting. So this card had a home there. I play this almost exclusively in my Workshop Weenie list. So its +1 is gas. I mean, the chance of me +1ing and not hitting a creature or relevant equipment or anything like that is great. The -1 turns any of my irrelevant small creatures into suddenly, or artifact lands, is suddenly into a very relevant creature.
It makes Hovermere playable. Continue.
And obviously the ultimate is fine. I think with Tezzeret in the decks I play, and I don't even care about the -4. Like, if you hit there, that's great, but you're getting so much value out of the +1 and -1 that it's kind of like the icing on the cake. You're not really trying to set it up, but you can, which is kind of cool. Silence from my co-host. Good.
I was just trying to think how icing involved. Like, you don't need to set up icing, but you can.
I actually think this is one of the Planeswalkers you can play for its ultimate. Yeah. You don't necessarily play for it in that deck, but it's great reach. Yeah. Like, if somebody moats you, for example.
I'm with you in that, like, you'll play this and you can definitely, when you play this, you're like, oh man, I'm going to ultimate and drain them for like 12, and then you're just like, oh no, wait, I'm going to make this a 5/5, hit you for 5, make this a 5/5, hit you for 10,
and now you're dead.
Yeah, and you're dead.
Like,
and sadly 15 is more than 12.
Yeah, we did the math.
Darn.
All right. I think I'm just going to move on to choice number 4 here. Now, choice number 4 is interesting. So I talked about a bunch of archetypes that I play a lot recently, but there was a while that I was on Abzan grind, Abzan attrition, not quite a pox shell, but like a lot of recurring nightmare shenanigans. And I played a lot of Garruk Relentless. So 4 mana Garruk for 3 and a green, and this is the transformy Garruk. This is the green on the front, black on the back one. So 4 mana, enters with 3 loyalty. When it has 2 or fewer loyalty, transform. 0. Garruk deals 3 damage to target creature. That creature deals equal damage to him. Or 0. Put a 2/2 wolf into play, and on the backside. Backside's where things get really spicy. +1, get a 1/1 black wolf with death touch onto the battlefield. -1, sack a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And a -3, a very spicy overrun. Creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. This is green targeted removal. This card is great. It comes in. I remember Wheeler, again, this is a conversation from days past, was like, this is like an auto-include in every green mid-range list. Like, green gets to lightning bolt another creature. This is great, and then it just does so much of what these creatures do. If you're playing an attrition-style deck, having a creature in your graveyard when you're playing reanimates or ways to abuse that means it's not even a downside. Sometimes it's actually a setup. Putting more bodies out never hurts anything, and I've won a number of games with that overrun, especially if you're dredging or you're filling up your graveyard over and over.
This card is so good in the green mirrors. I don't know if in the current format climate, I would say slam it in every green deck.
Yeah.
But if you are in the green mana mirror, where, you know, it always feels like, oh, I'm on the draw, my opponent's going to go mana dork into
Primeval Titan.
Yeah, prime time or what, like any top end thing. Garruk just like shuts down the shop. You just like play a dork, you ramp into this guy on turn 2 or turn 3, you kill their dork, it flips, so they're down mana, they have to deal with this thing, and then you get to tutor for the best creature in your deck. So you can like find your Primeval Titan next
first,
turn.
Yeah.
Or you can find, like, they'll build up another threat, and you're like, okay, well, I'll find my utility creature. Like, I'll find a Rex Sage or whatever.
Or you go get Dragon Lord Atarka and just slam the door right shut.
Grab a Palace Jailer, lock them out, kill their other door, get the Monarch, stay a while. It's great.
All right, that's number 4. Number 3, Garruk Wildspeaker. So another Garruk here. I like this for the ramp ability it has. So 4 mana, 2 green gets you another 3 loyalty Planeswalker.
Yep.
+1 ability, untap up to 2 lands. Very good. -1, you get a 3/3 beast. -4, just OG overrun. This card just does so much that you want it to do in a fair, possibly even unfair deck. Like mana ramps, creates a creature, it's a win con. I've also seen people experiment with this in like old versions of Academy, where you're like, wait, if I can untap one of my lands that taps for a lot of mana.
Double green.
Double green's a little hard, but I like where this conversation is going.
So I played a lot of this. I'm going to try and go a little bit faster here because we haven't gotten to Ben yet. We need to argue about our top 5 for the format. So love this card. I've played this card so much over the years. My number 2, Liliana of the Last Hope. So 3 mana black Planeswalker for 1 black. +1, oh, I have to go from memory while the card gets pulled up there. Target creature gets -2/-1.
Yep. Until when?
Until the until the end, your next turn.
That's the ticket.
Hey, all right.
Hey.
-2, put up to 2 cards from your library into your graveyard. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. And -7, you get an emblem. At the beginning of your end step, you get X 2/2 zombies, where X is the number of zombies you have +2. This card is great. Carry on. Yeah, there's blasting in the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah, this card is great in creature decks. This card is great in control decks. This card, probably not as much in control, but in sort of like the attrition-y control decks that I play, where you get value back. This does so much. And finally, the #1 Planeswalker, according to yours truly, that I have played probably the most out of any of these, Elspeth Knight Errant. 4 mana Planeswalker for 2 white. Comes into play with 4 loyalty. +1, you get a 1/1 soldier token.
Great.
+1, that's right, no minus. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains flying until end of turn. And -8, you get an emblem. Artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands all are indestructible. Elspeth is amazing in every archetype I like to play. She's a win con and enchantress because it works with opalescence. No, humility.
Moat.
It works with moat and humility. So a lot of those decks, if you're paving your own stuff and such, I've used her as a win con in Pox and like wildfire decks too, because you're just like, if everything's a 1/1, you're making 1/1s and you can jump over stuff. It's amazing. I've played her in mid range because all of a sudden your fair creatures get unfair and can fly. Gums up the board. This is my #1 favorite Planeswalker, and I think she's very good. Yes, you are Wheeler.
So it's funny. How much overlap between all of our lists do you think there was? How many?
I'm writing this down. Wait, all right, we've named 10 Planeswalkers right now. I'm gonna bet you we have 1.
Well, that's funny because I got a big fat 0 here.
Really?
We got 0 overlap. Now,
Really?
mind you, my list here is I didn't go with my 5 favorite because a lot of my favorite Planeswalkers are also the ones that I think are best in the format.
Sure.
I went with the 5 walkers that I think don't get the credit they deserve, that are absolute like powerhouses, and kind of some of them are kind of forgotten.
All right.
These are Planeswalkers that I stand with hard. Get your Orzhov Basilicas ready. So my number 5 is Sorin Solemn Visitor. So Sorin Solemn Visitor is 2 black and a white for, I believe, 4 loyalty. Sorin's +1 is until your next turn, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain lifelink. The -2 is you put a 2/2 black vampire token with flying into play. And the -6 is you get an emblem that says at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature.
Huh.
So this card looks really underwhelming
Yes.
on first glance. But it's one of those cards that once you actually play with it, you're just like, oh my god, how have I not played with this card before? +1ing, which it's until your next turn. So much like Liliana of the Last Hope keeps a creature locked down for that full cycle, this makes your entire team just a nightmare to attack into if you're trying to race at all, and just changes the clock when you swing over in the air with, I don't know, maybe black vampire creature tokens that have flying.
But they already have lifelink. It's redundant.
They don't already.
They don't have
I
lifelink.
know.
So
I mean,
like
most vampires is
right. Pumping out tokens that have flying and 2 power is pretty huge.
Yeah.
Like flying is, I mean, we've said this time and time again, flying is like this OP ability, and once you start creeping up from 1 power to 2 power, it really shows. This card being able to just kill opposing planeswalkers, or just fly over and peck away at your opponent while gaining a whole bunch of life, all comes together. The ultimate's kind of cool. You're probably not doing that because you're probably killing your opponent by, +1ing or making vampires, but it's there, and it happens relatively quickly. So you can just lock down the board if you really feel like you need to in a certain matchup. You can just play it, tick up, alt, and you're good to go. Number 5. And this is a card that I am so glad has earned qualifier points from our local tournament circuit after it was printed. Kaya Orzhov Usurper.
I knew this was coming.
I love this Planeswalker so much.
really.
Yeah, I am a huge fan. So 1 black and white for 3 loyalty. +1, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard, and you gain 2 life if at least 1 creature is exiled this way. -1, exile target non-land permanent with CMC 1 or less. And -5, Kaya deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So The +1, you are hard pressed to find a matchup where that is not going to be relevant. It might not be the super impactful you're going to win the game, but this adds up. Like any kind of racing scenario, this just it puts you in a spot where it's really awkward for your opponent to ignore Kaya, as well as so many different threats in our format and so many different cards that give aggro decks and mid-range decks reach, like Deathrite Shaman, like Scrap Heap Scrounger, like various decks that might want to have like a fair reanimate,
sure,
or and that's even ignoring the graveyard based decks or decks
delve
looking
or
to
anything. Yeah,
like this card says, hey, you're never casting that Tombstalker in your hand, sorry.
Is this a meta call, or are you just slamming this in everything?
I wouldn't slam it in everything, but if the decks that this has seen success in have been the Orzhov Death and Taxes deck, as well as the Esper, I don't even know what the hell we called it. It's like an
control.
Esper aggro tempo-y, like hate bearsy deck. Because this -1, it seems like you're exiling a non-land permanent with CMC 1 or less. But there are so many cards in here, and they're not the cheap stuff in the format. Like, yeah, you might just exile a Landwar Elf, but that hits hard when you have mana-intensive decks like Abzan Lands or Hoof. I haven't seen this card -5 because they just keep on ticking up the exile, or they get rid of pesky blockers or death rights, whatever it may be. But yeah, I love this card, and I'm excited to play more of it, or get in more than just the Super Friends list that I played. My number 3 is Will Kenrith. 4 blue.
I've never even heard of this card.
Comes into play with 4 loyalty. +2 until your next turn. Up to 2 target creatures have their base power and toughness turn into 0/3s and lose all abilities. Holy crap, I got that right. -2. Target player draws 2 cards. Until your next turn, instants, sorceries, and planeswalkers that player cast cost 2 less. -8, target player gets an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you copy it and can choose new targets. And technically it partners with Rowan Kenrith. I tried playing Rowan with this for the meme. It's not good. Joke's not worth it. Don't do that. So I've really enjoyed this card in the Super Friends lists and the turns lists. I remember playing this card basically when it came out in like a mono blue Academy, take as many time walks, Panoptic Mirror shenanigans deck. And I included it mostly as like, I've always wanted to try these big clunky blue Planeswalkers out. And this card exceeded expectations. The +2, it just butchers your opponent's board. Losing abilities on utility creatures or turning their best creatures into just 0/3s, and you're a deck that's not really attacking anyways, so who cares? It's pretty huge.
You're not worried about giving them blockers.
But that -2 is massive. So being able to restock your hand, poop down multiple time walks with planeswalkers, or a setup spell or a tutor to find your time walk to keep the party going, you just win the game basically if you untap and get to start doing this. The emblem, only done it once. My opponent was so infinitely dead, I don't think it ever mattered. But it is a relevant ability that happens quite quickly. Again, it's a 6-mana walker that you uptick, and oops, you get to cast a time walk, take 2. You get to wildfire their entire board. You can Armageddon twice. World's your onion.
Never explored the Doublegeddon before, but I like it. Okay.
My number 2 is Nahiri the Harbinger. This is one that has it's disappeared from a lot of archetypes, and I think that might just be a product of players moving away from that style. I know this card was very popular in the 4-color Kiki Pod decks that the pilots have mostly turned to trying out different variations, because 4-color Kiki Pod is we know how that show goes. Or Jeskai mid-range decks going to more of a control strategy, or Super Friends decks now having access to a pool of like 60 planeswalkers or whatnot. Nahiri is 2 red and a white for 4 loyalty. Tick up +2. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. not the worst. -2, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact, or tapped creature. Being able to exile any enchantment, I'm always looking for ways to do that. Enchantment removal is this weird position in our format where, like, you don't want to include cards specifically to do that. Like, you'll see lists that played Dramoka's Command, a way to deal with enchantments, having phased it out, even though there's additional stuff on the card. But playing this card and having that as an avenue to take is pretty great. Getting rid of a tapped artifact or creature, you get to kill a creature. And exiling's pretty big. And then the ultimate, my favorite. You -8, search your library for an artifact or creature card, put it onto the battlefield. It gains haste, return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Ha ha ha, good joke, next end step. That's not happening. You're probably killing your opponent.
I was playing a friend at PAX West a couple of years ago. My buddy Dick's one of the moderators from Lure. And he actually, in Highlander, Nahiri got Emrakul and killed me.
Oh, yeah. I've experimented with playing like hard Jeskai control with OG Emrakul, and then recently with it, 2 years ago, the new Emrakul, the 13 mana one. But honestly, the best creature to find with this card was always either Torrential Gearhulk or Inferno Titan, because you're just like, if you get Gearhulk, cast your Mana Confluence or a Dig Through Time, bash for 5, you get it back, or Inferno Titan, wrath their board, attack, hit them for 1,000,000. She just ends games so quickly.
Number 1 for you?
Ooh, my number 1 is Kaya Ghost Assassin. This is a card that...
Pardon?
I'm willing to swallow my pride.
This is the good one.
I thought this card was kind of a meme in that it was just a product of just mid-range slapping against other mid-range decks. This card is great. 2, a white and a black for 5 loyalty. 0, exile Kaya Ghost Assassin or up to 1 target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. You lose 2 life. -1, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. -2, each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. When you play this card, you are going to draw so many cards. You are going to cause them to lose so much life. You are going to gain a medium amount of life because you end up losing 2 life when you reset Kaya with her first ability. So being able to have this card stick around is pretty easy, considering if you're in white and black, you probably have some good removal options or good big beefy creature options. And she just synergizes with what those decks are trying to do, as well as some of the cards you're already going to include. So being able to either blink their threat so you can push through damage, reset your own Monarch cards, reset your own Eternal Witnesses, whatever it may be, reset herself if you've ticked her down to make them discard and you draw, discard you draw, or if you just drain them out slowly. This card has... There is not a situation when you're playing these colors that you won't be like, oh man, this Kaya does nothing. Yeah.
I'm very interested. All right, we are running low on time. I didn't expect that to happen today, honestly, but here we are. So let's talk about our format top 5. Let's just go through the list really quick, and then we'll compare, and then we'll discuss. Right. Jer, what do you think your top 5 are?
Number 5, Karn, Scion of Urza. Number 4, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. Do you want me to go describe what you shouldn't do, or is that too long?
No, I think we just have to name them right now, just in the interest of time.
Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, Liliana, The Last Hope, and Jace, the Mind Sculptor.
Interesting.
Oh, interesting.
So we have a
Jace at 1.
We have a Karn Scion there, and then we also had a
Teferi.
Nissa, the 3 mana Nissa, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. My top 5. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria at 5. Xenagos the Reveler at 4. 3, Domi-Raid. And my inclusion for those is I think they are really what help Hoof just go a next level up. Like, they're really only played in maybe...
Teferi Hoof.
Well, not Teferi Hoof, but those two. And of course, in first and second place, I have Jace the Mind Sculptor and Liliana the Last Hope.
Wow, that's really interesting. Just to clarify, Jeremy, what were your top 2?
Jace the Mind Sculptor and Liliana the Last Hope.
Okay, interesting. My top 5, in 5th place, I have Tezzeret the Seeker. Fourth place, I have Gideon, ally of Zendikar.
Ooh.
Third place, I have Garruk, Wildspeaker.
Hey.
Second place, I have Liliana, the Last Hope. And first place, I have Jace, Cunning Castaway. I have Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's the neat thing is, other than, checks it. I don't think, other than myself, where I had Garruk Wildspeaker and Liliana the Last Hope, none of us really had the top best ones up there. What informed your decision as to why these are the top ones?
I just picked the cards that I think are the best at impacting the game and fulfilling their role in the decks that they are played in.
Interesting. You have Karn, Scion of Una up there as one of the ones. Sorry, Scion of Urza. Why?
I think this card's still pretty underrated. I think this card's actually very difficult to play with correctly. And it's a card you can play. It's very easy to cast. You can play it in literally any deck, which is a big upside. And I think it is good at playing whatever game you want. If you want to play the value game, it's good at that. And it's even if you have no other artifacts in your deck, it's gonna win you the game eventually, and does a pretty reasonable job of that. So,
any questions about other people's lists there?
A lot of these, a lot of the walkers that you guys have on your top 5 that are not in my top 5 are like 6 to 8.
Yeah.
Xenagos and Domri are a little, I don't know. For me, they're lingering closer to 9 and 10 in the format. It's like I just feel like Garruk kind of fills that role of busted green planeswalker. One of the Garruks too. I don't know. This is hard. It's really hard to figure out.
Yeah.
I think outside of Liliana and Jace, which I think are sort of in a tier of their own. I think,
if we're talking like S tier and then A tier planeswalkers, there's only 2 S tiers.
I think there's 2 S tiers and there's maybe like 12 to 15 A tier or 10 to 15 A tiers.
Now people are going to ask us to make this list.
Oh, I have it if you want.
Really?
Well, I have my 5 to 10.
Oh, I thought you made like an actual tier list, because remember Liam made an actual tier list of every single counterspell in the format.
I have.
Do you wanna make a Planeswalker tier list, Ben?
I've got a Planeswalker.
We're gonna give you some homework. All right.
Yeah, I'll post the Planeswalker tier list through Twitter and Facebook and the Discord.
If you get it done fast enough, I'll try and add a link to the video.
Perfect. Yo, I'll do it on the ride home.
We'll look for that in the description below.
My super hot 5 to 10 though, for people like, why didn't you mention this? Chandra, Dak Fade, and Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, Gideon of the Trials, Teferi, Hero Dominaria. They're all still really good, and Karn is like 11.
I was kind of surprised by the lack of Chad in our top 5s, in all of our top 5s.
Come at me, bro. Gideon was my number 4.
On your top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like.
Do you mean Gideon Jura?
Any Gideon. We had one mention there.
I had Gideon.
Yo, hold on, let me finish my thought.
I had 2 Gideons.
I don't know. I expected there to be more Chads that we talked about there. Is it? I was gonna say. I think it's underwhelming. It's like, just Chad doing Chad stuff.
I'm so sick of this card. I included it in like every list that has white, but I am so sick of this card.
It's like we think it's good but not great.
I think it's great.
No, it's just like a solid 8.5. It's like one of the best cards in your deck. You always include it, but it's just like,
okay,
just all it does is win.
It's like why talk about Gideon?
All it does
it's like
is win.
what do you that's all.
That's another song, right?
It's just like, oh, Gideon, ally of Zendikar, great. Here's our hour-long bonus episode where we talk about how this card just beats face, makes dudes, and pumps the team. Like, that's...
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Well, due to time constraints, we're going to have to wrap the Planeswalker chat there, unless you have any last things you want to talk about.
Tybalt's not the worst walker. At me. That's it.
Chandra Blaze is the worst walker. Don't at me.
All right, so let's move to our closing segment, Powerful Magic. That's the new song. Up today, we have Ben Wheeler. Tell me a tale of spicy magic.
I got something that's pretty short and sweet and a little tied into the theme because we're talking about Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
For some of you that may be newer to the format or haven't explored the years of lore from like the late 2000s Highlander, it was a wild, wild west.
Yep.
And there was a deck that I played that I like to call 5-color Cascade Stacks. Serge, you might be a little familiar with 5-color Cascade Stacks.
It was something I aspired to for a long time. It was on a pedestal, and I would just look above and be like,
If you're wondering why people don't play it anymore, it's because it's about 27 points.
Yeah, 27 points. And then in modern standards, it would be 27 points, and that deck at the time had a bunch of like pointed Mishra's Workshop, pointed Moat at a time.
Our format was all over the place. All right, actually, one question. Which deck had, in the history of the format, had more unpointed cards? Your Cascade Stack deck?
Yes.
Or Brett Frankson's original Kiki Pod list?
Brett Frankson's Storm.
Brett Frank
Over 30.
The old Storm deck had over... Because I remember Frankson had, like, triple Mox, Breeding Pool... not Breeding Pool, Birthing Pod...
Survival.
Time Walk. Yeah. Just, well, anyways, keep going.
There was an old Doomsday list that I found when I was trying to like look at some of the older versions in the format.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, here's this Doomsday list. Your points are Recall, DT, Black Lotus. And I just like...
Plus like Mox Jet.
Yeah, Mox Jet. We're just Mox Jet because we had some extra points. So anyways, this deck, absolute behemoth of an archetype. Playing the Cascade creatures was probably not correct, but boy was it fun.
Oh yeah, just spin the dice.
So you were a 5-color stacks deck with a bunch of mana rocks. I played the beautiful synergy of Moat plus Bloodbraid Elf. Like, you just had all these... It was just disgusting.
All the wildfires.
It was like a disgusting display of, like, wealth as far as, like, these old, beautiful Magic cards just being inappropriately used and a bunch of 8-drops. And I just want to cover one of my favorite, like, turns that I've ever had in Highlander.
Okay.
It was just, like... It's very simple, too. Turn 1, I believe, was Workshop Coalition Relic Mana Vault. Turn 2... was just land, some other mana rock, and then I cast a card called Maelstrom Wanderer, which you actually gave me a foil copy for, I don't even remember.
We're like
what.
GP Vancouver 8 years ago. It's like, I found you a gift, Wheeler.
It was beautiful. So Maelstrom Wanderer, for those that haven't played a game of Commander, is 5 blue, red, and a green for a 7/5 legendary elemental that says creatures you control have haste. Cascade, Cascade. So you cascade twice when you cast this absolute monster of a card. Now, being 8 mana is great because it allows me to cascade into a couple of good hits, very top-end hits. Now, remember, this was in 2009 or 2010, so a lot of Ugin wasn't printed. You can't even cascade into him anyways. He's garbage. So I had to settle with casting Wanderer on turn 2. While I was on the play, mind you.
Turn 2.
My first cascade was into Karn Liberated, a 7-drop Planeswalker that later in the turn exiled my opponent's only land. And then the second cascade was Tezzeret the Seeker. 3 blue, 4 loyalty, you +1 to untap artifacts, you at -X find any artifact, and then you -5 is like every artifact comes to 5/5, you kill them. So I had a 7/5 with haste in play that gave everything haste. Karn in play that had ticked down to get rid of my opponent's land. And a Tezzeret the Seeker that had -2 to find Time Vault. My opponent was dead in so many ways. To this day, I always think like, oh, maybe I should try building this deck again because that was a really sick draw. This will never happen again. And
this is blind, right?
No. This was a match that led my opponent to such anger that they wanted to have a blind 7 game 3, which was actually a pretty interesting and fun match. But this is a lot more.
All right, holy moly,
personal to talk about.
Yeah, this is one of my like legends of Highlander.
That was powerful.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Whoop. My chair just Yeah.
All
All right, everybody. That's going to be our episode for today. Thank you very much. Also, look forward to more like War of the Spark and Planeswalker talk as the release. The hype machine is in full effect right now. Preview season. So check out all of those. Thank you so much, and we will see you next episode. So a reminder that North 100 is brought to you by your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. You're all the best. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.